Live to see it, friends, and welcome to The World Transformed. Tonight we're talking about aliens and uncertainty. My name is Phil Bowermaster, and with me in the virtual studio is my co-host, Stephen Gordon. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Phil. How are you?
Well, I am super fantastic. Happy Friday. How are you, my friend?
Man, doing great. Got to the end of this week, but this is sort of a holiday week for myself, and we took some time off this week, my entire business, and hope you had some time off as well to enjoy it.
It's been a fun week. It's the worst day to have 4th of July on.
Right. You want to connect 4th of July with a weekend. You really do, and it fell on a Wednesday this year, so.
But the good side to that was we then were saying on Monday and Tuesday, it was kind of like, well, this doesn't really count because we're almost to the 4th. And then after the 4th, it's kind of like, well, this doesn't really count because these are the 2 days after the 4th, So the whole week kind of becomes a big mulligan, right? But it's not quite a week off. But it's not quite a work week. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you do with that. But I got a question for you, Stephen. Or I don't know if it's a statement. Perhaps it's a declaration. Aliens. WTF. Am I right? Hello.
Well, it's WTF either way, right? If there's no aliens, well, what's up with that? And if we're surrounded by aliens, then, all bets are off. So maybe this uncertainty is a good place to be with aliens. Maybe we don't want to have aliens camped out on our doorstep. This business of not knowing might be the best possible solution for us. Or
if the only way we're ever going to know for sure is like Independence Day, then we're a lot better off not knowing, right?
True. Yes, we don't want the Independence Day scenario. Not a good one. And although that movie ended well, I think the weakest thing about that movie is the resolution.
Indeed. It ended well after a substantial portion of spoilers for Independence Day, by the way, but after a substantial portion of the human population was destroyed, right? So, it's like, well, it's a pretty happy ending, but because we weren't all destroyed. But anyway, those people had no doubt. They know that aliens exist, so their uncertainty was cleared up. So this is kind of the case in point about, sometimes maybe you're better off just being in a state of uncertainty, aren't you? So we got three stories here around the question of aliens, and some are more scientific and some are less scientific. We talk about aliens mostly from the standpoint of, is astronomy going to lead us to discover aliens? Are we going to find a signal out there? Are we going to find an astronomical anomaly that turns out to be evidence of an alien civilization? UFOs is not something we talk about all that much. Back when we were Fast Forward Radio, we used to do Tales of the Paranormal, and once in a while we would get a really juicy UFO story and talk about it, primarily for entertainment purposes. But something interesting that's happened over the last 3 years is there has been kind of a revival of interest in UFOs as a serious subject for inquiry. There have been a number of official government documents or videos released, both from the U.S. government and from other sources, that show really strange, anomalous things occurring, and that make the case that people really are seeing things, and this happens more often than you think, and nothing much happens with it. People see a weird thing in the sky, they note it, and then it's over, right? No one says anything else about it, and the story gets buried until the next time you hear about it. So what's going on there? Is the planet just constantly being visited by extraterrestrials to the point where a lot of people have seen it, but we don't talk about it because it's not considered scientifically serious and it's embarrassing to think about? Or is this just a huge delusion of some kind? Is this some kind of major mass delusion? Is it something like a present tense version of the Mandela effect, where maybe as we suggested in a recent show, maybe our brains are playing a trick on us or something like that? Well, here we got this article here. Are we alone? The question is worthy of serious scientific study. And one of the points that the author here makes is that, yes, there's all this newly declassified information, but anecdotes aren't scientifically helpful. And he's calling for a thorough, let's go for it, let's do a serious scientific investigation and see if there are indeed extraterrestrial craft visiting the Earth. So, I don't know, I don't have any problem with that at all, right? What downside could there be to investigating it scientifically, right? Putting funds behind it and seeing if that's the case. Is that a crazy idea, or is that a good idea? What do you think, Stephen?
I think it's a good idea. Now, there's some risk to the scientists that choose to do it, professional risk. And I think that's probably been a barrier to having a thorough study like this before, is that, you've got to entertain this crazy possibility, quote, crazy possibility, right, before you can actually investigate it properly. You can't have already decided that it's bunk or that it's true before you entertain a study like this, right? You need to really go into it with kind of an open mind. And just the showing of an open mind as a scientist on something, kind of wacky like this, it could be potentially professionally dangerous to someone. So I wish these guys well. Hope we have some good, brave scientists that will take this on and do a thorough job, and I think that would be helpful. I think it would be a great thing to do.
Is there some way to do science anonymously, right? Is there some way to do science without people knowing you're doing it? One of the things he cites in this article is very interesting. I'd never heard of this before. I guess back in the 70s, about 40 years ago, an astronomer did a survey of his fellow astronomers and asked them if they'd ever seen anything. Asked them, have you ever seen anything weird? Have you ever seen a UFO? And lo and behold, about 5% of them had a really weird story to tell, which is actually in line with the overall population. I guess about 5% of the people say they've seen a UFO. So astronomers, trained professionals looking at the sky, see UFOs at about the same rate as everyone else, and asked if they thought, is this something we should investigate? Is this something we should look for? It was like 40% of them said, yeah, we should definitely do scientific investigation. Well, this is decades old, so
right.
It could be that today you'd have fewer saying they'd seen something. Maybe you'd have more. Who knows? But I suspect you'd have fewer saying we should research it, which is unfortunate. I think if it was worth looking into, then it's probably worth looking into now, although maybe not, because we got this other story here that you added to the notes, Stephen. What's up with that?
Well, in 2014, the sightings of UFOs peaked and then dropped precipitously. It's like it looks like it hits this high and then like it bottoms out. And we're continuing to, as a society, as a world, a planet, we are continuing to see UFOs, but it's sort of like sunspots. They've kind of gone away, at least for right now. We are not seeing them in the numbers that we saw back in 2014. And I do have a theory. We have screen addiction. Instead of looking up, we're looking at our cell phones. So we don't we could have a UFO right above us, and unless they're in the background as we take a selfie, we're just not going to see it. So that's right.
You're presenting that as a joke, but that makes perfect sense. People don't look at the sky as often as they used to because they've got their phones to look at. So wow. So the alien craft are still there. There might even be more of them, right? But we're not seeing them because, in fact, that's why the aliens invented smartphones, right?
Just keep us looking at them while they take over. Yeah.
To distract us from looking at the night sky and knowing that they're up there doing their stuff. Well, and there you go. That's another. If there is anything to that at all, Stephen, there's another great example of kind of these deep behavioral changes that have been brought about by these technologies that drive everything we do. We've talked about how social media has changed the world so much and how smartphones have changed the world so much. It's like maybe we're not seeing UFOs anymore because we're not looking for them anymore because we're looking at our smartphones. It's just amazing. That's an astounding thought. Well, better that than they've quit coming, right? Because if you look at 2014, that's right around the time that suddenly we were hearing that there's actually a whole lot of U.S. government footage, a whole lot of U.S. government reports that bear looking at. That there are a lot of these incidents that probably have never been explained, and a lot of people who stand by the fact that they have seen something very strange in the sky. So suddenly that news breaks, and then people stop seeing UFOs. That would be strange too, right? It's like, well, suddenly the aliens are like, they're onto us, right? We gotta be cool. We gotta lay low, and they stop doing what they're doing. Or we're looking at our smartphones. Or how about this one? There never were any aliens, right? And we've stopped seeing them because there was nothing to see. So we've got this. we may be all alone in the known universe, a new Oxford study suggests. And our good friend Anders Sandberg, who's been on the show before, the Future of Humanity Institute, was part of this report, as was K. Eric Drexler, the founder of nanotechnology, was a part of this report. And basically, it's a technical argument, and I won't try to reproduce it here, but they show that we've probably just been doing the Drake equation wrong. If you're familiar with the Drake equation, that is a set of formulas intended to tell us how likely it is that there's life out there in the universe, and that the probability is that there's just nothing there. The probability is that we are alone in the galaxy and that we are alone in the universe. And these are not...
let me just take a second and just, put out the unknowns in the Drake equation.
Okay.
Average rate of star formation in our galaxy is one unknown. Fraction of formed stars that have planets. For stars that have planets, the average number of planets that could potentially support life. The fraction of those planets that actually develop life. The fraction of planets bearing life on which intelligent civilized life has developed. And the fraction of those civilizations that have developed communications or technologies that release detectable signs into space, and the length of time over which those civilizations release detectable signals. So that's a lot of things, that we need to know in order to plug into the Drake equation. And so, depending on what numbers you decide should be plugged in, you could have something showing that, hey, we're the only civilization in the universe if you plug in a certain set of values, or you could plug in values, more like Carl Sagan's values that he plugged in, and there's civilizations everywhere. We're surrounded by civilizations.
Right.
But
right.
It just depends on what numbers you plug in, and we have learned a few things since Drake made this famous equation. We know now that pretty much if you see a star, there's going to be planets.
Right. The planets are there.
But other than that, we're still clueless about a lot of this or most of this. So, anyway, that's interesting stuff.
Well, here's what they say in the report. This is a wonderful quote here. This conclusion does not mean that we are alone in our galaxy or observable universe, just that this is very scientifically plausible and should not surprise us. It is a statement about our state of knowledge rather than a new measurement. So I think that is beautiful because there's your uncertainty right there, okay?
Right.
There's your I don't know the answer, which I think is the right approach for this. Whether you're inclined to think that UFOs are real or whether you're inclined to think that we're probably alone in the universe, that is the tack to take, okay? They're not ruling it out, which we did a show about what can we not rule out a few weeks ago. And I think this is one. We can't rule out that UFOs may be real. There's a lot of reasons to be skeptical about a lot of UFO sightings, and there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical about what you might call UFO culture in general, for sure, right? But you can't actually rule out that aliens have visited this planet. It's not something that you can completely exclude. Nor can you exclude the possibility that we may be the one lone civilization in this entire galaxy. Those are both real possibilities. And we don't have sufficient knowledge to make a declaration one way or the other on those things. We have we have interesting evidence and we have interesting arguments on one side and on the other side, and it's worth looking at and it's worth talking about. And I guarantee you, as long as we're doing podcasts, we're gonna continue to say we're not saying it's aliens, but hey.
I'm just going to throw my gut feeling. I'm completely down with the uncertainty thing, but let me throw my gut feeling out there.
Okay,
I think that we are I think that our civilization is among the first in this galaxy. And why do I think that? Because rocky planets are kind of a new thing to the Milky Way.
Right.
This generation of stars that included our star is kind of a new thing. And life showed up on this planet about as soon as it could possibly have shown up. It was still a hot planet when life showed up. So, yeah, I think there's a chance we're among the first, which is a good place to be.
We might be among the first. So then, not that you have to have an answer to this, but what do you make of anomalous UFO sightings, the ones from credible sources where there seemed to be some evidence of them? What do you do with that?
I think I think it's probably bunk, but if it's not bunk, then that there's another civilization that's among the first, right? When
Okay.
I say among the first, I'm not saying we're the first. That would be an incredible lottery win right there, right? I mean, it's a big galaxy, and it would be very surprising if we were the first. But I think we're among the first. So.
Well, to me, the answer is, and I'm with you. I think we might be the first, or there might be much older ones because life developed differently than we thought. You can't rule that out either. That we're like a latecomer to civilization, and that everyone has transcended. I mean, there's so many interesting possibilities around this. But I look at that and I say, there is this leap that people make from unaccountable light in the sky to extraterrestrial civilization that there is no justification for whatsoever, right? I think that it's entirely possible that the Navy's got some interesting radar footage of something weird in the sky. It's entirely possible that astronauts and astronomers and other people have seen strange things in the sky. It's not bunk that they've seen something. There's something weird in the sky. The notion that proves that our planet has been visited by an extraterrestrial civilization is like this. There's your ideology right there. I mean, there's your narrative that just comes along for the ride, and there's no reason necessarily to think that's the case. They could be aircraft. They could be a natural phenomenon that we have no idea what it is. They could be a particular kind of optical glitch. There's so many different possible explanations where, yes, people actually really are seeing something, but no, we're not being visited by extraterrestrials. And that doesn't get much airplay at all.
The very beginning of the basically the modern UFO era is Roswell, right?
Yep.
And what almost certainly happened there is that we had a spy balloon that came down, and the official explanation, at least for a couple of days, was, hey, an alien craft. Anything but to say what it really was, right? And of course, then after that, they said, no, it was a weather balloon or whatever. They backed off of the alien explanation because they knew that was problematic. But that's probably almost certainly it was a spy balloon. They were launching those things back then, and they get it up into the jet stream, and it could take some pictures over the Soviet Union, and they could do that before they could do spy satellites, and so they were doing a lot of that back then.
Well, I'm just going to save a YouTube commenter the trouble here, Stephen, and point out that there are eyewitnesses to alien bodies, in Roswell. So,
okay, all right. You got me.
Way to drink the government Kool-Aid, or perhaps who's paying you to say this, I guess, is the other question.
Well, they've been slow on the checks here recently, so they really need to.
Stephen's shilling for the military-industrial complex to keep this whole thing quiet, that we've had alien intelligence
for
years, technology.
I could definitely be bought, but man, they've been slow on the checks. But anyway.
Yeah. And that stuff is so entertaining and it's so much fun, but it doesn't necessarily follow. So it's entirely possible that Anders and Eric and the rest of them are right, and that we're alone. And it's entirely possible that people really are seeing something. Those two things can go together in a lot of different ways that we haven't put together yet. It's also possible that we're not alone and that aliens have visited. Everything's on the board right now. Okay, that's the thing. We don't have to give everything equal credibility. And for example, although there are eyewitnesses, I don't believe there were any alien bodies. I don't think an alien autopsy took place. If that makes me a bad person, there is a comment section here on YouTube. Please let me know. Lay it on me.
I'm sure that will be explained to you. But
and when I say I don't believe them, I just think those explanations are very unlikely. I can't rule them out completely. I just think it's not likely, right? I think there are more likely things that probably deal with the uncertainty better. I'm sorry, Stephen, what were you going to say?
Well, I was reminded about these scientists that have they basically put something on the line when they investigate something that's a little weird.
Yep.
And I was reminded of a professor that I don't recall where I read this, but it was a professor that was responding to something like a flat Earth question or something like that, and said, "Look, I could spend my career attempting to prove to flat earthers that the Earth is round, or I could do something useful with my life, right? I don't want to spend my career doing something that's off the wall." Now, would I put this question in the same league with the flat Earth? No, not at all. I think there really is some uncertainty. It's just but this will take some professional courage for scientists to take on, because there are going to be those that would attack them as saying you are wasting your time and your talents on a question that's silly. And
in fact, especially if they find something. If they look into it and they come back and say, there's really nothing there, then they'll be lauded, right? Thank you for doing the scientific research. But if they find something, then they're in a lot of trouble. I mean, it's going to be that will be painful, and that's just how it works with uncertainty. I think that there's probably a few that might take the risk. They might get written off then as not being real scientists anymore, which is kind of ironic and sad. But I hope people keep poking at it. I hope we keep looking at it, because I think there may be interesting discoveries to be had there that we're not expecting, that maybe don't speak to aliens, but maybe speak to something that we hadn't even thought about before. And, speaking of things we haven't thought about before, we're going to be back again next week with 3 brand new shows. And I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. Do you?
No, I do not. But that makes it fun for us, too. Hey, do we have a minute to geek out just real quick on a couple of things?
We've already gone long, so yes, we've got all the time in the world.
Might as well, right? I enjoyed Batman Ninja. I'm going to tell you, I enjoyed that over last weekend. It's an animated show. It's you could call it anime because it's full-on Japanese production. Basically, they gave a Japanese company the right to use the Batman character and go wherever it is you want to go with him. And man, they produced a fun and fresh take on the Batman mythos. I enjoyed it.
Batman Ninja. So Batman he's Japanese. He's not Bruce Wayne then. He's some Japanese guy.
It starts in normal Gotham, normal Batman bad guys, right? And but it becomes a time travel story. So Batman, Alfred, some of the other Batman allies, plus a good portion of the Rogues Gallery are all transported to feudal Japan. Now they show up at different times, and so the bad guys show up before the good guys primarily, and so they each set up their own little kingdom in different portions of Japan. And so you got feudal lords of Joker and Two-Face and things like that. So Batman shows up and he sees what they're doing to Japan, and he basically goes full on Shogun on them, and it's fun. I mean, it's very fun. And of course, mechas are involved. You can count on that.
Naturally, they would be. Yes.
It's weird, it's fun, and it's worth taking a look if you are an anime fan or a Batman fan.
Now, was this a comic originally, or you say it originated as a movie? It started out as a movie.
I don't know. You know what?
Back in the 90s, DC was doing these Elseworlds, and I know they did stories kind of like that, where Batman, only it was in medieval times, right? Or Superman in a very different setting. So I wonder if there was a comic that was drawn from, or if they just from whole cloth created this new story. It sounds really cool. Either way.
It was fun. I enjoyed it. Also, Ready Player One's out on Blu-ray and streaming. And Phil, did you ever get around to seeing Ready Player One?
Not yet. Nope.
I think you'll enjoy it when you do. I love the novel, and it's a loose adaptation of the novel. You can't you just couldn't do a full-on adaptation. You can't get all the IPs together. You just can't. I mean, it'd been impossible. So they did a loose adaptation when they made the film, and I thought it was great. I enjoyed it. In some ways, I think I enjoyed it a little better than the novel. So,
I look forward to seeing the movie. On reflection, my moral problems with the book have only amplified over time, right?
The way I know, the one moral problem you had was, our hero kind of just gives up on trying to save anybody. I think the way it's presented in the book, in the movie, there was no saving anybody. The particular scene that you're thinking about, he just had to get out of there. I mean, because there was no chance of anyone surviving what he witnessed. Right. And he just needed to get out of there. So, and he did right under those circumstances. It's not really presented that way in the book, and so I think that's an improvement the movie makes.
Well, it is, because in the book it never even occurs to him right? That he might
try to
give
save
himself up to save other people. Yeah, it's like that's nowhere on his radar. I'm sorry, these are all spoilers for the book Ready Player One, and I had a real problem with that. And the more I thought about it, the less I liked that.
The less
character.
you like it. Well, I think if you watch the movie, you'll go, oh, well, if that's the case, there was chances to polish up the story when they made the movie, and they did it, and I thought that it was pretty good.
So. Well, hey, while we're geeking out, I saw that The Last Jedi is now on Netflix, Stephen. So I want you to, take a day, calm yourself, get off all your stuff, and just give it a watch, right? And see
it. my kids are like, they just want me to stay away from it. Look, I
don't want to cause any trouble at home.
That's right. My kids are like, you know what, Dad, you just need to stop watching YouTube videos about it. You need to stop obsessing over it. This does you no good. Oh gosh!
All right, I'm sorry I brought it up. We'll just
That's right.
We'll forget the whole thing.
The more I think about the movie, the worse I feel about it. So
well, that's why I think you're thinking about it too much. You just watch it again, right? And maybe you'll land somewhere in between when you like it and your hatred that you have of it now. You might find there's more to like about it than you're thinking. But
or I might find more to dislike. So I don't know. Maybe
But it's too risky. Let's just forget the whole thing. There's lots of
that's the thing. There's more to life.
There's plenty other content to be consumed out there. All right, man. Well, we've gone very long, but hey, thanks for sticking with us, folks. It's been a fun week. We are going to be back next week with 3 brand new shows. And until next time, live to see it.